Hi, I'm Dr. Hans Toki, and this is another social research tutorial. Today, we're going to talk about the cinematic montage. We live in a world of pictures, a visual culture. Cameras are everywhere. You know this, I know this. In fact, the individual person has their camera on you right now. The concept has arisen from this of the polycinematic montage. What we mean by this is many cinematic cameras, montage all put together. So we have multiple pictures and scenes playing simultaneously in the urban landscape. The French called it the flaneur, or the stroll, the street walk, where if one were to walk down the street of Paris, they would see multiple cinemas playing, multiple stories playing simultaneously on that street. The same would be true here in New York City. If you're to walk on a given street, a lot of different drama taking place. Interestingly, during the pandemic, with nobody on the street, it created its own drama of absolute solace and solitary spaces. So the drama of that alone was captivating. Even as I drove through Manhattan with no traffic, I remarked that, wow, this is different. So through our eyes, we get an understanding of our world. Visual representation becomes a primary way that we record knowledge and understand the world. And this enables us to master not only our own universe, but the universe that is around us, the social universe, as it were. And so the statement, a picture is worth 1,000 words, in research, this is certainly true. The historical view of the cinematic montage arose out of the University of Chicago as a social science tool using cameras. Students were put on the street to not stay in the lab in the classroom, but on the street to walk the neighborhoods they were studying and take photographs. Now, I understand these are very large cameras. This is not just the little tiny things we have today. But using a photograph to tell a story verified what they were writing about. So it became a journalistic approach to how we write about research. It becomes a novel style. It's storytelling. And the camera then, a photograph, becomes a way to verify that the story is true. So we have this authenticated cinematic montage, many films put together to create a story. Moran and Rouch continued this work in the cinematic verite, or cinema verite, where they argued that the technology is available for the filmmakers so they can follow them around. The documentary film partly relates to this. The key is that there was a possibility now with the camera to move beyond the spoken word or beyond the written word, to catalyze, become catalytic, and infuse new life into what typically had been written work. In Canada and USA particularly, they showed how we wanted to be voyeuristic. We liked pictures. We wanted to be a fly on the wall of other people's stories, get into their business and engage the community. And so the documentary arises out of Canada and the USA and then moves around the world as a way to get a glimpse inside people's world. So I want to find out about you. What are you doing? What's going on? But I'm not peeking. The voyeuristic approach. So the camera became a spy, not a participant observer. Because of this, academia booked out on the camera. The camera was seen as cheesy. It was seen as not serious. It couldn't be trusted. It was biased because journalists were using it now. Documentary film even could not be trusted because it was based on a bias that was pre-written, and you choose to film what you want to film. It's not the real story. So the camera lost its authenticity within the field. Broadcast media then piled on by sensationalizing news and research, as it were, into entertainment. So there was an appetite for what was happening in the world, but we want to take a picture of that first walk on the moon, or we want to take a picture on the front lines of Vietnam, and we want to take pictures of cute people and the fashion people, and we're going to talk about them all on talk shows on television. So now you had the idea that the documentary was maybe fiction, maybe not, because it was partly personal essays, it was partly experimental film, it was audio art, so maybe serious to a certain point, but not really social research. Claude Debord became very critical about this. As he argued, we were creating a society of the spectacle. We look for sensation, not reality. So anything filmed cannot be serious. Modern consumer media, though, has changed this dynamic. We now have tools where you and I can both get our camera and film on what we like, and this becomes transformative. For instance, I'm here talking into my camera today. We'll upload it to YouTube, and from the YouTube, you will observe this video. Who would have thought 100 years ago that this would be possible for me to sit here in my place, discuss what we're talking about, film it, and then download it in a matter of an hour? This is transformative to social science today. We've shifted from one language of just a written word to now the language of the camera. So it's time for us to learn how to use the cinematic montage as a research tool, the consumer camera as a research tool, not just a sensational grabbing of the story. Parenthetically here, I am going to say, I think a lot of students are quite irresponsible with their camera, and they choose just what to film in order to get social sensation in their social media, or to capture a certain biased moment. Like, for instance, these days, if you can capture something viral and send it viral, that matters more than whether you have the story or not. So while the consumer camera is very useful now in social research, because we all have access, we don't have to use the broadcast media nor filmmakers to create the films, because we can do it ourselves. There's also now the advent that anybody can do it. And so the foggy lines and fuzzy lines between what is academic and what is just sensation are forever melded. I'm asking for you to take your camera in this terms, not to create Instagram posts, but to create research notes using camera notes. So what is then visual sociology? It's the distinction between consumer pictures and sociological pictures. They have a different purpose. Consumer pictures are to be consumed, sociological to tell a research story. So it does a new way for how to describe what we are seeing, especially those things that we may not notice by writing, or things we can only capture an image of and then describe later. It also, because we have the consumer camera, it's not disassociated from its research community or research field. It doesn't pull out and just look, oh, what's going on there in the voyeur. No longer is it a voyeur. Now it's right in the scene. So it keeps common people in the loop. We can wander our cameras within certain participant observation environments, and it's a real snapshot of a real place in time. Visual footage and field notes then combine to create how we do sociology. Really, the visual footage, the camera notes, the short films are field notes. So they yield different type of data than you might get from traditional note-taking. So it's a tool that we can use to explain our experiences and perceptions as they are seen. So a photo gives us layers that we can look at. For instance, this video I have here. If you did not have this video, I could talk to you about how we have a cool background with the two posts that frame me in this Italian leather chair. all of it's secondhand. But if you see it, you know what it looks like. I could describe it in as much dense detail as I could, but it's easier for you to see it. So visual footage becomes a new way to display findings, more detail that we can bring to the element of it all. So the public intellectual now becomes one who can describe the voyeur culture. They can stare in on what's going on into the eyes that are everywhere, but then add meaning because they were there. So it's now just not sensationalized, but it's actually reality. And it opens debate for us to discuss certain social scenes we would never have done before. So in creating a visual narrative using the camera, certain things need to be done. Where does it take place? Who are the characters? What happens to them? What do they look like? What are the burdens they carry? What are their feelings? What we're after is to capture those feelings visually. Now, I think there's a good example that's here in New York City. The Humans of New York project attempts to accomplish this by taking a photograph every day of a New Yorker and then telling their story to some degree. Now, that's an accidental visual sociology, but I still think it works pretty good because with every photograph, they hold themselves accountable to tell the actual story of this. I recommend for everybody to watch the Facebook series by Humans of New York called Help. And it gives a very good use of consumer camera as a way to tell stories of New Yorkers. And the people being viewed are given a level of authenticity that we feel that we otherwise wouldn't get purely by someone else telling the story or by the written word. So we become voyeuristic and looking. So we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean now for me to bear witness to an act and retell this on videotape? How does this transform the way I view the scene? So take, for instance, a thing that's being filmed in many, many different ways these days are police shootings. Some of them very much carry an agenda to them that is political. Not so much about racial justice. It's very politically driven and it goes viral. Others are responsible in trying to tell a justice story of some inequality. Others to document what actually took place in the scene, the whole scene, not just the snippets. So the same video could be used three different ways. One of them to tell a politically biased story, another one to tell a racist story, and another one to tell actually what took place. So this transforms how we can look at a scene. We have to ask ourselves then as a social researcher, what's possible for me to see? Can I see it from different angles? Can I look at it from different ways? Am I seeing the reality, what's there, or am I seeing a political bias, or in the case of police shootings, a racist bias, or a police bias, or am I seeing the whole scene? Do we just look at what we want to see compared to looking at everything? This is what voyeurism and looking as a researcher should cause us to question, is making sure I have an objectivity in the way I use my camera, not simply using it for some public or personal agenda. So we're going to make visuality sociological then, not just camera for no purpose. So you have to think in these terms, what would happen if I were to give my camera to somebody else, and what would they film? So as I'm filming them, am I being honest to what they are? So take, for example, my camera being here as what we call the third eye lens. The first eye being me, the second eye being the scene I see, the third eye being the way this camera over here sees the scene. Am I being objective with the way that is? Is it sociological? Am I trying to study the sociological scene? So am I making it sociological, or am I just still stuck in bias and seeing things my own way? So the responsible use of camera and making it academic and using camera notes takes us to a different way of viewing camera and notes than we otherwise might not have. Then we have to ask ourselves, how do we then describe reality of the viewer? When the person's going to view this video, are they seeing reality, or are they seeing my bias, my opinion, my inaccurate account of what's going on? Because we're using photographs, people have tremendous ability to interpret what they see, maybe even more so than with written notes, because written notes are just there. We have to be very careful then that we're making it sociological and a sociological essay, not a personal bias essay. This creates the need to see with expertise. A great theory here is what we call the third eye lens, where we are the observer of the scene and a participant simultaneously in the scene. I mentioned it here just a couple of minutes ago. So take this hand, I have a camera. In this hand is a camera that's the third eye. It can see what is going on. I am first eye, what I see. You out there, you would be the second eye, because we're in conversation with each other. So I would interpret and feel about my scene a certain way. You will feel about your response in this video a certain way. And this camera up here is capturing this interaction between the two of us and how we feel about it. So third eye placement, being able to view our world from a third eye, is a really good acquired skill. Well, another way might be this way. I have my little drink here. It's almost empty. I've been filming all morning, but it is a lovely sparkling ice cherry. Are you getting thirsty? Nice little buzz going down. Non-alcoholic. With cherry limeade flavor. First eye, me drinking. Second eye, the drink, because I'm interacting with the drink. Were the drink not here, I could not tell the story of the drink, correct? What I'm telling the story about is my feeling towards the drink because the drink exists. A similar relationship to this would be as if I'm in a forest and I am seeing a tree and a wind. I'm the first eye because it's my experience of what I see. The second is the tree because I'm interacting with it. Third eye is, what is this relationship? So the third eye would have been filming me in taking my drink. And you observe that because you're watching the camera results of me drinking. So we have this expertise of third eye placement that's really important for us when we're using camera. This brings us to ethics, teamwork, and filming. That a great story being captured visually doesn't just depend on itself. Good camera notes people know how to scan the web, scan other files to find photographs that matter to this. This is really useful, especially in historical research, where you can look at photographs from the past and use them for the future, or to interpret the here versus the then. So what we want is this authentic moment in time that takes place. This is what it looks like now. This is what it looks like then. I've had some students do this with great success. One of them in particular, I remember, was working on a bodega in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And in this bodega, I'd put up all the new kind of lighting, the bright, flashy lighting of kind of a new hipster style bodega, compared to your classic older bodegas, which weren't so pretty. Well, what this student did was they went to archival data and found the exact same camera evidence of this bodega, and then compared it from what it was then to what it is now, which became a whole story of the change of the neighborhood and the gentrifying of the neighborhood, from Red Hook being a working class, working poor neighborhood 30 years ago to being one that very much was driven by hipsters nowadays. So teamwork means not only having different people taking photographs, but working with other historical documents that are out there or other camera work that has been in your field. So this helps us to be a little bit more objective, than just saying, this is what I said. This is what other people's pictures say as well. So the other question you have to ask about risk, ethics, and bias. We don't have time to talk about that in detail here, but think about this. When I'm using my camera, how am I intruding on these people? Am I being safe? Am I being conscientious? Is my photos biased and making them look bad and deliberately making them look bad compared to good? I think this is one of the real crimes, as it were, and literally could be a crime of defamation in social media today, of people taking photographs of others just to make them look bad, because there's a bias to it. So you have to ask yourself these questions of ethics and bias, and then risk. With what I'm taking pictures of, is it going to be risky to you? I had one student came to me once and she was a fashion design student, and she wanted to use camera notes, great idea, to film gang bling. I said, you need to be careful here, because you can't just stand on the street and take pictures of gang members and their bling. Oh yeah. I said, that's not safe. You have to analyze the risk. Brilliantly, she found a window on the second floor of an apartment where she could use lens still to study gang bling within its own environment without having to deeply engage it. But the question of risk was right at the front. Similarly for you, ask yourself, is this safe, or how much am I risking myself? And then power. With these camera notes that I take, what could I do with them? Am I going to be responsible to them? Someone who's allowing me to take their picture is giving me some level of authority to do so. So as you become more powerful in using the camera lens, you can become more intimidating. Now, in my early research students, this isn't an issue, because we're just going to do a camera notes project of some kind of nonchalant type thing in your neighborhood or happening. But for some, it becomes a question of power. And how the camera can emerge as an intimidation factor or a truth factor. All right, at the end of the day, what your goal is to have visual field notes that you can present feelings, gestures, what people are expressing, that are both objective and subjective. So technically, I have a smile. It's objective. But how am I feeling about my Corona beard? I'm not a fan. I'm really not. Objectively, how does it look? Subjective, it's itchy. Should I get it shaven? Biased question. I will eventually get it shaved, but there'll be a before and after continuum of notes. But you will have captured the feelings, gestures of its moment in time. So you have this subjective and objective almost simultaneously. And it captures the episode, or what we call episodic research, in a way that you can't capture it any other way. They're brilliant methods, if you're responsible with your camera, to be able to film things and use them as notes. So in the end, what you will create, a great assignment, would be a cinematic montage. You decide on investigating a topic based on a research question you already would have. Then you break that topic into various subsets. So a good example of this is art forms in the neighborhood, if that were your topic. You then would take photographs of graffiti, public art, of commercial art, consumer art, or so on. Maybe you're interested in food groups, so then you would take pictures of fruit and vegetable stands, of restaurants, food stores, bodegas, street food, to capture the essence of a neighborhood. What I challenge my students in the cinematic montage to do is to take at least 10 strong photographs of at least 5 subsets of your research topic. That'd be at least 50 photographs. Then you collaborate those photographs into a montage, which is a collection of them to tell a story. That's a cinema. It's just not random pictures. It's a story. And you then attempt to give a story of the neighborhood about this. Then the final questions you ask are, what are some things that you find or conclude or discover about the neighborhood and about my topic from these photographs? And then I challenge them to caption these photographs, because these notes then become very valuable as camera notes that you can actually then write the technical written notes in the future when you get to a research project. So the cinematic montage, the consumer camera, a very valuable research tool these weeks, these days. Use it responsibly, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be biased. Don't try to make people look bad. Have a great day.